All right, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to a special edition of the Sunday stream here on the Pox Populi YouTube and Odyssey channels. We are live on YouTube, and I don't know, my Odyssey's been having some problems. I haven't been able to watch any live streams on Odyssey because I keep getting a message saying that the media can't be loaded. There's a problem with the server or the network has failed. So I hope that my live stream on Odyssey will be watchable. Um, if anyone is watching there and is having problems, just let me know in the chat. And then if it's not working, just head on over to YouTube. Okay, and today I have someone who I haven't spoken to for a while. It's our friend, the German Pointer. And welcome, German Pointer. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks very much, Pox, for inviting me on. I think we last spoke it must have been April or definitely before the summer anyway.
It's been a while. Yeah, it was before the summer. Um, we spoke. It was after the Russia Ukraine thing kicked off because we did a stream about that, and then we did the Braveheart stream, right?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure, but maybe the last one was the Feminism in Spain video.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Which actually gained a lot of traction.
Good.
A lot of people got in touch about that. So
Well, maybe
I think
it
opened a lot of eyes. Yeah.
I think that's probably something that we might even have to discuss today because like today's just going to be a nice relaxed chat, just have a bit of crack, as the Irish say. But there's really not any sort of like formal thing we're going to discuss. But in regards to the feminism in Spain, that recently has kicked off yet again over the past few weeks. Have you been paying attention to that? Well, first there was the La Ley de Libertad Sexual, and then now Irene Montero is also trying to like normalize pedophilia. She was recently saying that children have the right to have sex with anyone they want as long as there's consent. And she's trying to push this new like sex education policies, these changes in the education system that basically, promote sexual degeneracy, the trans ideology, all that. Have you seen any of that?
I have not. Actually, I'll come clean. Most of what I hear about that's going on in Spain, I hear from your podcast. So, so I heard you talking about this woman, and she was promoting pedophilia. There's no point in saying more or less. From what you said, she was promoting it. So, I will say though, I've noticed, I've spoken to people, and even young people, a lot of them aren't on board with all this stuff. I think, in a lot of the medium-sized cities, and obviously in the towns and that, all this is nonsense to them, But maybe in Barcelona and Madrid, you've got the kind of wealthy teenagers and people in their 20s who think this is all wonderful and progressive. But I have to say, just from going around lately, most people I've spoken to, they're quite concerned about, mass immigration, and they're also quite concerned about this LGBT lobby. So there is some light, there is some light there at the end of the tunnel. It's not everyone is on board, definitely.
Oh, sure. In fact, yeah, so as German Pointer mentioned, I do a Telegram live stream every Thursday night. And, briefly, I might get into some sort of current event stuff. Usually, I talk more about a certain theme or topic. And then it's also like a call-in show, so people, call in and give their thoughts as well. But yeah, in the last couple of editions, I mentioned some of the things that's going on in Spain regarding, in particular, the feminist dictatorship, and so they passed this new law, or it has to go through some more of like the bureaucratic machinery before it's fully approved. But it basically means that if it gets approved, it will mean that a man can be charged with any sort of like sexual crime, even without evidence. The only thing that is needed is the woman's word, and that is enough to, put the man on trial. He can be charged, and his life can be ruined. No need for evidence. That was expressly stated by the Minister of Equality, who is a woman named Irene Montero. And then a week after that, or about 2 weeks later, she was in front of microphones and cameras, giving, and speaking very, very ardently, very aggressively, lots of hand gestures and aggressive facial expression, saying that every child has the right to a decent sexual education. It is our responsibility to educate, to provide sexual education to all the children, and children have the right to have sex with anyone they want, as long as there's consent. So that's just, paving the way to grooming and ultimately pedophilia, which just seems to be the next, the next distance that they want to push the envelope. So yeah, that's something that's been going on. My friend, what about you? What has happened since the last time we spoke? Your YouTube channel got taken down, if I recall, for not the first time. So if you want to, without getting into the wrong think that caused your channel to be taken down, if you want to tell us how that happened, and then anything else that's caught your attention in the months since we last spoke. So go ahead, take it away.
Sure. Yeah, the channel, I think it was doing all right. It wasn't getting any, black marks, anything like that. It was doing all right, and then suddenly, I think I got banned for a week, and it was a video, possibly something to do with COVID, and yeah, I just continued posting stuff on Odyssey and BitChute, and then when I got back after the ban, I made a video, and I just said that from now on I'll be uploading on BitChute and Odyssey, but I'll only stream on YouTube. And I went to bed that night. When I got up in the morning, I just was having my breakfast, and I opened up YouTube, and I couldn't actually, I couldn't get into my main page, to see my subscribers or to see other people's videos, stuff like that. I had to log in. So when I logged in, it said the account had been terminated. I didn't bother trying to, get them to confirm why or anything like that. I just said, right, fair enough, and that was it. I wasn't very down by it. I had a channel over a year ago, well, maybe closer to 2 years ago, and for that channel they were constantly banning me, so I seemed to be banned, and I just come back, and then they banned me again for another few weeks, so I could never really upload videos, and eventually I got fed up and I just took it down. But this time they took me down, and that was it. I suppose during the summer, yeah, it was quite hot. I spent the summer in Madrid, and that wasn't really my choice. I had to move accommodation. I had an agreement with the agent that I'd move out before the tourists came, and I went up north. I was there for a week. I couldn't find any accommodation at all. Everything was gone. And eventually I just said, right, there's one place where you can definitely find accommodation in summertime, and that's Madrid, because the Madrileños tried to get out of Madrid in the summer. And the heat wave was just, it was just unbelievable. And I got sick. I don't know if I ate something bad when I was traveling, but I got sick and I couldn't shake it off. And I was really sick for possibly 3 or 4 weeks. I probably, had there not been a heat wave, I think I would have been fine after 4 days or something like that. But just with the heat wave, it was prolonged, and yeah, I wasn't up to much really. I read a good bit. That's more or less all I could do. And events, I didn't really, I kept an eye on some of the COVID stuff. When I was on the metro in Madrid, I noticed that a lot of the young people aren't wearing masks now, even though you're supposed to. You're supposed to wear it. And I was there a few days ago actually, and it seems now that even more young people aren't bothering with the masks. It's mostly, I would say, people from 25, 26 upwards that are wearing the masks, and the younger people aren't bothering. And it was funny because I was standing on the platform and I could hear the speaker going over and over again. It was like a broken record, telling people, reminding them that the mask was mandatory on the Madrid metro. And it's as if it's a last push by the government to try and force people to wear these masks, but people are just ignoring it, the young people especially.
Yeah, it's really curious, and I'm going to get to this comment here, comment question by Babyface Nilsson in a moment. So with the COVID measures that are still in place, Spain, as I've said repeatedly, is a country which is obsessed with the masks. They implemented them early on. They were really, like I said, just obsessed with them. Whereas in other countries, the mask was something that, for example, the local shops, the local supermarkets, they might ask you to put one on, but you were well within your rights to say no and just carry on your day and carry on your shopping. And in other countries, or in several countries, the mask was never something that you had to wear when you were outside, walking along the streets or in a park. Well, in Spain, and dates are kind of getting fuzzy. It's hard to remember exactly the dates and everything, but I believe it was around coming into around June of wouldn't be 2020, would it? It would be 2021. That's when they said masks are going to be. No, it'd be 2020. Actually, yeah, 20. So we're going back. It's like such a blur. But in Spain, masks were going to be mandatory everywhere, inside, at your place of work, in the supermarkets, in the shops, employees, customers, everyone, but also mandatory outside. If you go outside, you also must be wearing a mask. I've told the stories about how I was stopped on more than one occasion by the local police and the Guardia Civil, the sort of state police, and was harassed and even had to go through some fines and things like that because I was out walking my dog on an empty street in front of my house, and a police car showed up and I didn't have my mask on, so they tried to give me, they tried to harass me for that. And then another time I was coming back from the gym, jogging, didn't have a mask on, obviously, covered in sweat. It's a hot summer day, and the police show up and stop me and say, "Where's your mask?" It's crazy, and that continued for the longest time, even as other countries didn't implement such strict mask mandates or never even implemented them in the first place. And now, today in October of 2022, Spain remains the only European country which is still requiring airline passengers to wear masks, and stewards and stewardesses have to wear masks as well. Still, only Spanish airlines are doing this. And I've seen also there's been, but some Spaniards are resisting. They're trying to make a lot of fuss about this and trying to make it so such a hassle for these companies or these public transports to require the mask because too many people are not complying, which is the best way. Non-compliance is and was the thing we should all been doing. And so I've seen also that people are a guy named Alvise Perez, who's really, really interesting guy. Really, he's a good freedom fighter. He has very good takes on all of this, but it's all in Spanish, so unfortunately, maybe a lot of people in the Anglosphere might not be able to follow him. But he recently posted some videos of his experience flying domestically within Spain, and they were giving him all sorts of hell because he wasn't wearing his mask on the plane, and he even has an exemption form, but you're not required to show it. You just have to say, "Look, I'm exempt," and this private company does not have the right to demand to see your exemption. And they were doing all this stuff. So Spain is still crazy with restrictions, is what I'm getting to as far as masks go. But what it is, I don't see too many people still wearing them. In my small town, it's very rarely, but I'll still see, like, usually an adult or an elderly person wearing a mask alone, in their car or walking along the street. And it's still, it's like, ugh. But what is also still in effect is that in the pharmacies, in the chemists, the employees who work there have to still wear masks. And it's the only sector, as far as I'm aware, where the employees are still required to be masked up at their place of work. And as a customer going in, you have to put on a mask too. But no one is happy with this. Like, I know someone who works in a chemist, and she was, she's at the point of pulling her hair out. She's just so pissed off and frustrated. Like, why do I have to keep wearing this? But unfortunately, that is the situation for them. What's it like?
I heard
did you see anything like in Madrid?
Well, I was told that this is what I was told, customers have to wear masks if they go into a pharmacy. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And also the chemists working there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense because they want to keep this thing going as long as possible. It's good for money, it's good for the cash register or whatever. But yeah, when the mask thing came in, I thought it was laughable, and I was very, very naive because I thought this isn't going to last long. It's going to start getting hotter here. People aren't going to wear masks, and they had to wear them outside for, I think it was for a year, and then there were a few months you didn't have to wear them outside. And I think just before Christmas, the government reintroduced it for outside, and I think that didn't last long. It might have been just for a week or two. So it was like the 22nd of December. It was some weird date like that, where they don't want people relaxing, they don't want people going home and enjoying the holidays. And yeah, you'll remember there during the summer that the government started. I think they brought legislation in that they would send people around to the cafes to make sure, and the shops to make sure that the aircon was a certain temperature. That's just outrageous stuff.
Their response to, like, the heat wave and also saving energy or something is also kind of wrapped into the Agenda 30 types thing. So let me just get to this question here. Babyface Nilsson asks, Spain seems cut off from the mainstream of European ideological warfare, frozen by Franco. And I would actually have to say completely the opposite. Spain is an epicenter of the European ideological warfare. Spain was sort of hermetically sealed during the time of Franco. Some people who are more inclined to be unhappy with the Franco regime, the Franco years, are apt to describe Spain as being held back, particularly culturally, during that time. But actually, Franco, advanced Spain in many ways, and he kept a lot of cultural degeneracy out of Spain. But in current year, Spain is an epicenter of the ideological warfare, and Spain is also just really acquiescent, really servile, because it's not really an important country anymore, especially compared to what it used to be. If you go way back, and so they're kind of just like a lackey, and they're a yes man, and they do whatever the UN says, they do whatever the EU says, because they can't really do anything else. It's also a country who's economically in the dumps in many ways. And so Spain is well on board with Agenda 30. In fact, there is a ministry for Agenda 30. Spain created its own. It's created its own. You've got the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of the Economy, the Ministry of Equality, led by that crazy communist who promotes pedophilia, and now Spain has the Ministry of Agenda 30. Our prime minister, the Spanish prime minister, the Spanish king, Felipe, they're always seen with the Agenda 30 multicolored lapel pin. And then as far as the ideological warfare, well, I think it'd be well worth watching the very conversation that the German pointer and I had about Spanish feminism, because Spain has been really just under the thumb of, I would even describe it as violent feminism. It's violent anti-male feminism for quite some time, and it just gets worse and worse. And inclusive language is being forced into Spain. Again, talking about this woman, Irene Montero. If you know Spanish, you know that we have gendered nouns. And so, for example, to say children is niños, a boy is a niño, a girl is a niña. But now they are adding the LGBT trans ideology people are trying to force this e suffix, this e vocal gender denomination. So now it's you'll listen to Irene Montero, and for example, in that diatribe that she did promoting pedophilia, she didn't. If you translate it, if I say exactly what she said in Spanish, it was todos los niños, niñas y niñes. All of the boys, girls, and this new thing that we've invented that's non-binary. And that is being normalized. That language is being normalized, particularly by her at every moment possible. Her campaign slogan, or like behind her on her speeches, there'll be big posters saying, her political party is Podemos, and so to say like Podemos con todos, todas y todes, right? Podemos with everyone, all men, all women, and all these new people who don't fit in either of these categories. So that's happening here as well. And then just a few days ago, to talk more about the ideological warfare, just a few days ago, the Spanish media tried to make this huge Spanish media and the Ministry of Equality, the left, the communists, the transgender people, they took advantage of this thing that happened in a school, like a university. It's a tradition of this university where at midnight, the boys in their dormitorium, their sort of area of the faculty of the campus, rather, at midnight they all run to their windows, which face the girls' campus, the girls' dormitories, and at midnight they all yell like really grotesque, sort of lowbrow, vulgar things, and the girls respond, okay, equally, in kind, with vulgarities and stuff, which is ironic because this is apparently a religious school as well. And they're young adults, they're 18 years old, and what happened then was the media just turned this into boys sexually assaulting, ataques machistas, sexual attacks on these girls. And the reality of the situation is that they're all friends. It's tradition. These girls are not in any way under threat from these boys. It's a tradition, and they were shouting vulgar things as well. But then, lo and behold, Irene Montero takes advantage of this fake scandal invented by the media, which it works for the government, and she uses this to say, look, see, we need to implement my sexual education policies because look at how evil boys are, and they think that they can, shout these machista, sexist, misogynist things to girls. So we need to implement my pro pedophilia, pro trans ideology education changes. So yeah, Spain is actually a massive battleground, and it's actually quite tiresome. It's very frustrating to live like this because the media control a lot. The feminism is really powerful here, and then of course it's an Agenda 30 lackey. What are your thoughts on this? Is that similar to your experience, German Pointer?
Yeah, it's quite toxic, the environment. And even like when I was looking for accommodation, I was looking on the most popular sites, and you could have maybe from Madrid in, let's say, the start of July, you could have 4,000 rooms to rent. So you'd have flatmates. You weren't going to rent a flat. So 4,000 rooms. And then you go to filters and you type in, you have to choose your gender, male or female, or, you belong to the circus, one of the three, So you click male and suddenly, 3,500 ads just disappear because it's girls only. And,
Wow.
you're down to a few hundred. And then, a lot of them will say they want gay-friendly flatmates, and others will say they want to live just with Latinos. And you're really at the bottom of the barrel trying to find a room to rent. So
Wow.
there is this thing, that males are dangerous, but it's kind of funny because it's along racial lines. European males are dangerous, but
Yes.
as you know, when a group of migrants, when it rapes a Spanish woman, it doesn't really make the news. It might make the local newspaper. No one will really see that, and then it disappears. But the
And
case
the
you're
images
talking
are
about there,
pixelated, and the name isn't mentioned, the nationality isn't mentioned. If it's a non-Spaniard committing those crimes.
yeah, and that's something as well. I've seen across the West in the last few months. These pixelated photos, some guy with a knife, and they pixelate the face, but you can still see the arms. So he's not European. But yeah, it's quite toxic, and I'm not surprised that Spain has one of the lowest fertility rates in Europe. I'm not surprised at all. This thing has been going on for the last few decades, and when you are constantly on about how dangerous Spanish men are, Spanish women are eventually not going to bother. Either they won't bother with men at all, or they'll race mix.
And I would even add that I think actually it's the men who don't want to bother with women these days. And you're right that this is one of the reasons that Spanish fertility is so low, because Spanish feminism here isn't promoting the well-being of women. It is obviously, clearly, and vehemently anti-male. It is entirely based on anti-male hatred. It is entirely based on emasculating the Spanish macho man. And the even before Irene Montero tried to get this new policy of that there's no evidence necessary to charge a man with a sexual crime. Even before then, the risks that a man in Spain runs just by flirting, this is similar all throughout the West. This is just very similar in like Title IX situations in the United States, or in Brit-Bong land or Canada. These things are everywhere, and it's the same in Spain. It's no different. And so a lot of men are checking out. It's not worth the risk of getting accused of a crime. It's not worth the risk of having some crazy zorra, trying to ruin your life. And I've seen this even play out with my own eyes. I've been on I've been out with friends, and we've gone to a little wine tasting or something in a different town, and a bus has been hired to take us back to our town. And it's been a long day of drinking wine, and people on the bus are a bit tipsy or whatever. And the boys on the bus, the lads, start singing a song or something, and some feminist on the bus takes a disliking to one of the lyrics and begins berating the men, and thinking that she can just get in their face and scream at them. And the men just react very sheepishly. They put their tail between their legs. And I remember on this one particular occasion, I saw someone at that time who was a friend of mine. These people, I don't really speak to them anymore. We've had lots of falling outs over the years, especially since COVID and stuff. But anyway, at the time, this was like 6 years ago. This person was someone I considered a friend, and he was just being berated viciously by this crazy feminist and the other feminist who was with her. And I sort of just put myself in between her and my friend. So there's just sort of like a physical barrier, because she was really getting too close. And the funny thing is that friend, that ex-friend of mine, he was a feminist himself too. He was a male feminist, enjoying the fruits of his ideology, screaming in his face. And he still, he never changed. He never realized, actually, what? Maybe Vox Populi is right about these crazy ideologies, these subversive, corrosive ideologies. But anyway, I step in between, and I just sort of look at the feminist kind of, askance, and just give her a look and like say, this is enough, just stop. And she actually hit me on the shoulder. She gave me like a slap on the shoulder, in a sort of like, hey, it's just a conversation, it's just a disagreement, or hey, what are you worried about? But like, again, that's a physical invasion of my personal space, and it's an expression of an aggression that's clearly bubbling over. And if she could legally, have hit me harder, she would have. And I remember she hit me in the shoulder, and I looked at her like, really? Are you not seeing the hypocrisy and the blatant hypocrisy of your actions right now? Like, don't touch me. But this is the behavior of women. They think they can get away with anything now because the whole culture and the whole political mainstream and the media mainstream has been promoting this anti-male division, hatred towards men, and promoting this idea that women can do no wrong, and they are acting it out. It's a real shame. But just to end on a positive note, I will say, just the other day, I was speaking to someone who is currently still a friend of mine, and his girlfriend, and we were talking about this, this recent fake scandal with the school and their tradition of shouting vulgar things at each other at midnight. And it was the girlfriend who mentioned it, and she was the one rolling her eyes and saying, this is such bullshit. It was not a scandal. They are friends. The girls participate too. There's nothing wrong here. The only thing that's wrong about it is that for someone like me, speaking as myself, not as the girl, I'm not a big fan of people shouting vulgarities at each other. I'm not a big fan of a sexually degenerate society anyway, but I can't control everything. And so in the context of what those young people did, okay, it's not the best reflection of high culture, sure, but it's also not at all, misogyny or sexual violence. And so this girl was even saying, yeah, like, this is totally made up scandal. They're just trying to cause more anti-male division and hatred. And so, yeah, like you were saying, there are plenty of people who are sick of this stuff too. So that is a positive.
Yeah, as well as that, I was just thinking, you mentioned that they were shouting insults at each other. In Spain, and I found it very strange when I first moved here, even children will use very dirty language to each other, and it's considered okay. Whereas in Northern Europe, in Ireland, for example, you would get into trouble, if you're a kid and you use bad words.
There's really no such thing as bad words in Latin languages. Like, this is the same in Italy as well.
Okay.
You can say a lot of, there's no bleeping on the television. There's no like 4-letter words type culture. The worst thing you can say is probably like, an insult to La Madonna in Italian. There's all sorts of different ways you can add La Madonna to an insult or a dirty word. And that's really offensive. People will take offense to that. Same as in Spain, if you insult La Virgen, the Virgin, in any sort of way, that's considered offensive. That might make, create a scandal. But just saying like your day-to-day bad words, quote unquote, nobody minds. It's like you said, even kids say them. And in the context of what happened with these kids, what they did was they run to their windows at midnight, turn on the lights, bang on the windows, and shout across the field to the other campus. And they scream things like, "Hey, little rabbits, come out of your dens. We want to fuck you." And then the girls scream, "Here we come. Give us more. We want more. Queremos más. And so it's kind of like that's what they're shouting. And that's what Podemos, the left-wing, quasi-communist party, is making a big deal of. This is what the media has been running wall-to-wall coverage with. And it's, of course, it's a perfect distraction as well. I think it's 100% designed to help Irene Montero's cause du jour, which is changing or introducing her pro-trans and pro-pedophilia sexual education agenda. But I also think that the media is doing this to direct attention away from the fact that, for example, millions of Spaniards are paying skyrocketing energy prices. So they're struggling to get to the end of the month. food is costing more and more at the supermarket. And while that is happening, just recently, just a few weeks ago, the Spanish politicians voted to raise their salaries, which are of course paid with public money. So instead of the Spanish population being aware of that bit of news and directing their frustration and anger at that bit of news, instead they're being distracted with this nonsense at some school, some tradition between the boys and the girls at some school. It's clown world stuff. It is total clown world stuff.
Yeah, I should say as well that feminism, it's very much astroturfed, and it can change. It can revert back to a normal society overnight. If you remember there earlier this year when the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan, like there was a journalist. I don't know what channel she was working for, but she must have been around 40. She had blonde hair. She wasn't wearing a hijab or anything like that, and she was giving the news from Afghanistan. And when the Americans pulled out, the next day she was all covered up. She didn't resist. Yeah, she didn't resist. She got with the program. She got with the program, and I think that's female nature, to get with the program very, very quickly. If wherever the power is coming from, that's what you have to obey. And the reason we have so many feminists now is because the media and politicians are promoting it, and therefore they think this is the way to go. This is the power is telling us to do this. But when things change, and they will, because at the very start of this stream you were telling me, more or less this politician is trying to promote pedophilia. That's, you're getting into Weimar Republic. We're already here, obviously, but there's only one way out of that, and it's it's a completely natural process, and it's going to happen. I don't know when, but it's going to happen in the not so foreseeable future.
Well, that's certainly positive. I'm a positive take, positive angle. I've lost my faith in the pendulum theory. Like the idea that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and that over time, society goes from one extreme. The swinging pendulum goes from one side, swings to one extreme, and then it swings back, and you might find yourself at any sort of trajectory of the pendulum, as it swings back to the other extreme. And you might not like it if it goes back to the other extreme, if it goes too far to the other extreme. I used to subscribe to that idea, but I think actually it can get a lot worse still. And I think civilizational decline and decay is actually cyclical. It's not a pendulum, it's a cycle. And we have reached the part in the cycle of our civilization where, we just have to endure the decadent fall that many empires go through, that many civilizations go through. And then, the cycle will start again with a new civilization, and we'll see what that looks like. But I'm not so sure. I hope you're right, though. I do hope that I hope the pendulum theory is valid, and that there will be a reaction to this. So let's get into some.
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
Just to conclude, Pox, like what's happening now is completely against natural law. These things that are happening, they're against natural law, and you can only avoid natural law for a certain period of time, and then you will have things happening that try to bring things back into harmony. And obviously, harmony is not forever. Things go bad again, but it will get worse. Obviously, it's going to get a lot worse. But at the same time, there will be a movement across the world against all this. It's not going to go on forever.
And that sort of thing that's interesting too, as you mentioned there, across the world. We can talk about the American Empire being the sort of the big power of the current timeline. You can make comparisons with the Roman Empire or the British Empire. What's so interesting about this timeline is that it's global. Like, civilization, Western civilization kind of went global. We're not talking about, just one country's decadence or just one empire's decadence. While the Roman Empire was decadent and falling into transvestite emperors and, sacrilege towards their gods. And then, there's this sort of subversive new radical cult coming from Judea all this stuff is causing, and then the empire splits and all this stuff is going on. Okay, but the rest of Europe wasn't going through that, that sort of decadence and that sort of degeneracy and subversion. Whereas now, the Roman Empire is kind of like everywhere. It's happening everywhere, and it even isn't happening just in the West. We can see that this is starting to trickle into even countries that people think are really based, like China. It's starting to have its trans stuff going on. People think Russia is really based, but Russia's got plenty of pause as well going on. So it's different extents of the degeneracy and the pause, but it is still global, which is really interesting. That's kind of why I wonder about the pendulum theory, because the pendulum might swing back to a more natural order position. There might be a reaction to what's been going on for the past decades and such, but it might not be in your country. And so it'll still be everywhere else, and you won't have the luck of it happening where you live.
Well, if the face masks are anything to go by, Spain could be the last country.
Exactly. Okay, so there was one thing, unless there's anything else that caught your attention over the past few months, I want to get into something else.
Yeah, nothing I can think of. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So a while back, you made a video about chemtrails, and I shared it on my Telegram, and some people in the Telegram chat and channel kind of reacted with the usual naysaying and this is just this is too schizo. This is one conspiracy too far. But and I remember hearing about chemtrails long ago and kind of thinking the same. That sounds a bit far-fetched, and also, why would they do that? And all sorts of different doubts. And then it's never really been something that I thought much of until, again, COVID stuff, which kind of just lifted the lid off the boiling pot, and now it's like, wow, all these different conspiracies seem to have a lot of truth to them these days. And so you made this video about chemtrails, and I shared it because now I would say I'm a lot more open-minded to the idea that there are chemicals being sprayed in our skies, and they don't usually have good effects for us. And just a few days ago, I think maybe it was 2 weeks ago, here in Spain, total vindication for the schizos regarding chemtrails, because this is just one of many examples of chemtrails being real. Just one of many examples in Spain alone. But I want to talk to you about this. I don't know if you've seen this, but if you go to the Diario de Huelva, the province of Huelva's regional newspaper, the town, the city council of a town called Rio Tinto in Huelva discovered that a agricultural company called, and this name is very ironic considering what they do, called Organic Citrus. They discovered that this company was, and according to the newspaper, according to the statement, quote, bombarding the clouds with chemical products designed to impede rainfall. And so that's what this private, company is doing. Imagine what governments can do. And governments, especially governments with very high tech, weather manipulation technologies like China. And so if I just went into there's even, you'll know what this is, an official Boletín de Estado, Boletín de Huelva, the local government there made an official registered communique, memorandum about this. And they came out very strongly saying that this is highly, highly toxic, very damaging to our environment, but also that of our neighbors in the neighboring provinces, because of course these chemicals get picked up by the winds and carried by the winds throughout the rest of the region and God knows where else. So I remember as I was reading that article and seeing this, of course I shared it, and it's like, yep, vindicated. But I also thought of that video you made. So what do you think about that, Jerome Pointer? there's a citrus company, an organic citrus company, launching chemical products into the skies.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It's kind of like the tobacco companies back in the day, telling you that cigarettes were good for you. I remember like years and years ago, so back probably around 2009, 2010, and in Dublin, they were spraying the sky a lot. I remember that. And like in winter in Ireland, you will get days of clear blue skies. It'll be very cold, but you'll get clear blue skies. But it seemed that every day was very cloudy, and the clouds came from those chemtrails, So if the planes weren't up there, we would have clear blue skies. So I remember talking to people about it. Now I've never made claims that they're spraying, human pesticides, or I've never gone out on a limb and said anything like that. All I've said is there's a concerted effort up there by some organization to block out the sun, and because generally the chemtrails are where the sun is. And when you say this to people, and even back in the day when you said this to people, they immediately called you a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, and you were kind of laughed out of it. Next you'd be saying he was abducted by aliens.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this was just for pointing out what was in the sky. As I said, I never claimed that they were doing something. I just said, they're up there and they're obviously spraying something. That was it. So it's kind of even a few years ago, because I think a few years ago when I started out making videos, I mentioned chemtrails, and I got a lot of flack for it, because there are a lot of people in nationalist circles, and when they hear chemtrails, they immediately switch off. They just say, "Oh, that guy. I thought that guy was, I thought he was clever. I thought he was one of us, but he's obviously just a complete freak," And I've always found that strange, that you're pointing up at something that's going on, but yet people choose not to see it, And it's in our nature to look up at the sky and ask questions. It's part of our nature. It's one of the things that differentiates us from the animals, that we look beyond our confines or whatever, and we think. And in the case of chemtrails, it's blatantly obvious. You look up, there's a plane going by, and there's a long line that goes on probably for, 20 miles or something. And then you look up again, 15, 20 minutes later, and there are 4 or 5 lines, and the original lines are fanning out, for miles and miles and miles. And within an hour, it's dark. There's no sunlight getting through. So from what you're saying there, and I do remember someone sent me a link, it could be a year and a half ago, or that in Valencia, I think it was published. It was an official publication from the the Ayuntamiento or whatever, that they were spraying. They were intentionally spraying the sky.
Yep.
So
yeah, in the case of Valencia, this is one I mentioned as well too, because I get the same response whenever I mention these sort of schizo, as it's been called by some, these schizo theories, but I even say that the Comunidad de Valencia, they also, in official government bulletins, confirmed that they do this, and they justified it by saying that what they do is it's designed to impede rainfall, and they spray these chemicals that keep the rainfall, like rain clouds from forming or something, because it's meant to benefit tourist season and keep the tourists on the sunny Valencia beaches and spending their money going out and enjoying the sunny days. This actually even increased the spraying increased during COVID. Pedro Sanchez, the prime minister, his government, the state government, national government, said that they were spraying descontaminantes, decontaminants in the skies. That's what they say they were spraying in the name of fighting COVID. That was happening over the past year and a half during the so-called pandemic. So they were spraying the skies with chemicals that's the definition of what we're talking about. That's, you can say, oh, it's not this, it's not that. Well, going into the clouds and spraying chemicals in the skies, that's chemtrails. That's what I'm defining as chemtrails. And the government was doing that. And then there was also a whistleblower in the National Meteorological Agency of Spain who says that he knows of 4 pilots who have testified that they were continually employed to go up into the skies and spray, amongst other things, dióxido de plomo, which in English is lead dioxide. So they're spraying chemicals, they're spraying metals in the skies that do all sorts of damage to not only the soil when they, mix in with the rainfall and come down back to the soil. They do all sorts of damage to our health as well, causing headaches or just, illness, dis-ease. They provoke these sort of things. And as you said too, they just create also really gloomy weather. And interestingly enough, people who listen to my little chin wags know that I like to do my exercise, my workouts on the rooftop of my building. And just last week, I was up on my rooftop doing my workout, and I looked up and I saw a plane flying overhead with a very long trail behind it. And I thought, that's interesting. I'll keep my eye on that. And as you said, as the time goes by, the minutes pass, that trail expands and expands and expands. And then, you see another one off somewhere else in the distance, another one of these white lines streaking across the bright blue sky. And then wouldn't you know it, all the days since then, since that this was about 6 days ago, every one of the 6 days since has been the weirdest weather. It's been hot, but there's no sun. The sun is behind this veil of cloud. Everything is like gray. The sky is gray. The sky is this sort of sickly yellow color because the sun is there. The sun is shining, but it's behind this veil, and it's very. It feels like the sky is very close. It's very low, and it's very oppressive, and it kind of hurts your eyes to look up because everything's just kind of white and gray and pale yellow, and it's been like that for an entire week. And I'm just wondering, is this a natural weather pattern? Why, I don't know what the explanation is, but then I remember seeing, these planes with these streaks of white behind them, wondering maybe now could that be a reason? And then also, you were talking about the heat wave. I have a lot of friends in agriculture who were saying that this was such a hot summer and it was so difficult to get any sort of harvest. It's been so bad. The olives are going to be horrible. The grape harvest was horrible. And everything was just so dry. There was no rainfall. So they were forced to use up, so much chemical fertilizer, which just creates this vicious cycle of you're putting chemicals in the soil to try and get some sort of return. But of course, those chemicals also kill the soil. So you have to add more chemical fertilizer, and it just never stops. And I remember even saying to one of my friends who's a bit more, red-pilled, and I can talk openly with him about lots of things. And I said, there is technology that exists, chemical technology that exists that, can impede, can prevent rainfall. And I wonder if that's what they're doing to try and justify their climate agenda, to increase food prices, to price us out of, the animal proteins that they don't want us to be eating anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And when I think about what this company, Organic Citrus, is doing, bombarding the clouds with toxic chemicals to prevent rainfall. And I think, this is a part of Spain that's in the south. These things get carried by the wind and they can spread God knows how far. And this could also be an explanation for the so-called heat wave and the really dry summer that provided no yield as far as agriculture is concerned. I mean, it's worth just asking the questions at least. And I think that the dissident right, or whatever you want to call it, should be much more open-minded, since many of the things that are actually fundamental values on our side are already considered conspiracies by the mainstream. So what difference does it make? If you're already going to be called a conspiracy theorist because you believe in the Great Replacement, which is also true, why should it be considered so crazy and schizo to also think that this regime that hates us and wants to replace us is not engaging in other nefarious activities?
Yeah, it's quite disappointing. I think they very much trust the science, or the, how would you say, scientism. they really they don't like asking questions, really. A lot of people are like that. They'll do anything to avoid thinking or questioning themselves, questioning their own opinions. And that's why, like, the chemtrails, talking to people back in 2009, 2010, and I remember they immediately, they kind of denied it was happening, They just denied, and you'd point up at the sky and say, look, you see all these lines, and they'd say, oh, that's just normal. Planes have always done that. But you see, I remember when I was a child, and I remember being outside and playing football, and a plane would go by, and you're out in the countryside. So as a kid, wow, a plane, and you and your friends, you're all looking up at the sky, and this plane goes by, and there is a trail, but the trail is about 3 or 4 times the length of the plane, and it dissipates very, very quickly. But now what you have, these things don't dissipate for a long time. They just, as you said, they spread out and out and out, and suddenly there's no sunshine. There's just, the day is gone, And it's kind of funny because you probably, I don't know if you ever watched The Simpsons when you were a kid, but there's an episode where Mr. Burns, I think it's like a two-part series, whatever. Mr. Burns blocks out the sun over Springfield. It's actually very, very funny. There are a lot of jokes in it, but this is what they're actually doing now. They're blocking out the sun. And if you're a farmer and you're growing certain crops that need, so many days of sun per year, you're really dependent upon what the government's going to do. And they can put you out of business. They can put you out of business. In Spain, I don't know, back in, I think it was around 2007, 2008, they were promoting, the solar panels for your house and all that. What good are the solar panels when, they're blocking out the sun? So it's just very, very strange.
Well, it depends on the area too. Like we mentioned Valencia. In the Valencia's case, they were trying to keep the sun. They were trying to, I think, it's about blocking the sun for the global warming thing, and preventing rainfall in some areas, for the tourist economy in the case of Valencia. But you're right. There is this meme. There is this drive to consider blocking out the sun with, some sort of explosion of particles in the atmosphere that form some sort of protective barrier. And that's been put out by very important, influential people and organizations, including, Computer Man, Mr. Bill Gates, who has been reduced in our sort of circle to a boomer tier meme, cartoon villain. And I think that's a very unwise path to take. He has influence, obviously. He has wealth and he has power and he has his fingers in lots of pies. So he isn't a meme. He isn't a cartoon villain. And I think it's definitely worth paying attention to what he and his foundation get up to and in what they invest in. I remember sharing a video a while back about this worldwide science, lab coat driven idea that's mainstream media organizations, New York Times, The Atlantic, they've all run with variations of this theme of, hey, you know what? We might want to look at blocking out the sun to stop global warming. And they're serious. It's not The Onion. This is The Atlantic. This is the New York Times. This is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation talking about these things seriously. So yeah, I think the whole schizo tag that gets attached to this stuff is not warranted.
Yeah, I can just see the headlines to come. The sun, man's eternal enemy. How will we destroy the sun?
Well,
Yeah, but
that's
just to
that's
go
interesting.
ahead.
No, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like you mentioned, you know, on the dissident right, that there's this kind of inflexibility. You know, they won't. If you mention things like chemtrails, they consider you a joke. You know, they consider you some sort of joke. But lest we forget, these are the same, you know, content creators or whatever that were, you know, they were telling people that they should get the job, and that, you know, if we want to have a part to play in the future, we should get the vax. So, I don't think these people have a lot to
Some of
say.
them were saying that sort of thing. Yeah, and to be fair, I think some have come around. They saw the error of their ways, the error of their judgment in that particular moment. Some have just become more obstinate and insufferable. But yeah, there are those. I'll say that I understand those who say that, look, our main concern is nationalism. Our main concern is demographic replacement. Our main concern is advocacy for our ethnic group, for our in-group. And so that should be our focus. And we don't want to look ridiculous. So we shouldn't dabble too much in things that have been tainted as ridiculous, whether fairly or unfairly. And so really it's not our, it shouldn't be our focal point, or it shouldn't distract us. Things like chemtrails or, anything else that really isn't, or even in some cases, people are saying this about the COVID vaccines and COVID in general, the whole pandemic in general, that really it's not our responsibility. Don't worry, stay focused on demographics, great replacement, that sort of thing. I understand the part about not wanting to look ridiculous by associating with there are some genuine weirdo conspiracy theorists out there. So I do understand where they're coming from on that particular score, but I kind of look at it holistically, and I do think that a lot of these things are one and the same. They're intertwined. They're all about ultimately making us unhealthy, making us atomized, decreasing our quality of life, decreasing our expectations in life, and ultimately causing us harm. And it's funny that you mentioned a sort of satirical headline that could potentially become real one day, which is, our eternal enemy, the sun. How can we defeat the sun? And it's kind of tickled me, because if I were to take that concept and look at it from a sort of like an esoteric perspective, it can be said that our ancestors worship the sun. We are a sun worshiping people. All of the Indo-European religions are focused on sun worship, but there's this particular group of people that preferred to worship Saturn, not the sun. And so you could say that the sun, well, it was certainly not their god figure, their central life-giving figure. Maybe it was even their enemy. And now, if we actually get to a point where there's some of these people who are descended from that particular group of Saturn worshippers that want to obliterate the sun, well, maybe that's actually a desire that goes way back, way farther back than we realize. But
they sound like people who hold grudges.
Yes. But that might be getting too schizo, so we'll leave it there. But I like to entertain those kind of thoughts, just for my own imagination, even sometimes. So when you said, eternal war against the sun, that kind of, oh, hey, there was a group of people who don't seem to like us very much, and ancestrally, their religion was based around the Saturn worship. So, anyway. All right, so we talked about the chemtrails. Some other stuff that's been going on. You made a video, I think like yesterday or this morning, about you had an experience at your local bank. So do you want to get into some of the banking stuff that's going on with like the sort of digital currencies, the central bank digital currencies, and the universal basic income, and some other things that have been going around in global finance? So any thoughts on that?
It doesn't bode well for us, I think, the idea that we have a digital currency. And A video has done the rounds. I think it was on Morgan's channel, and a few other people mirrored it. It was originally from a guy called Richard Hall, and it's a satirical video, but that's the thing these days. Satire is very close to the truth, and the idea is that you've got these two idiots, more or less. They're a couple, and it's all about convenience. Isn't it great that we don't have to carry around cash anymore? And they're sitting watching their TV, and it's it just gets worse and worse for them. They're told that they can't travel. They can't spend their money, whatever, outside a 5-kilometer zone from their house, and then they're told that they can't buy chocolate. They can't buy chocolate. They can't buy other things, and it's really a communism where you've got very little choice. And it's generally not very nutritious food that you get. You certainly don't get steak. And I think this is the road we're definitely going down if they get rid of cash and we're all dependent upon central banks. It's the technology is there. It is there, and people, in a way, they shape their own futures by how they do things. So, for example, if people, and a lot of people now, they don't use cash, they use their phones, they use their credit cards, whatever. And if more and more people are doing that, eventually they'll just get rid of cash, which means you've got no privacy whatsoever. And when you've got no privacy, then the government can mold you into the perfect citizen. And yeah, it seems to be something that's creeping up on us. And just that video you mentioned, I went to a bank. I had trouble over the summer trying to open a bank account, and I went a few weeks ago. I opened up an account, and they sent me out a credit card, but it was kind of an overdraft card on one side and a credit card on the other, and I didn't want it. I just wanted a debit card. So I'll put out. I have to record a second video because I actually went to the bank and finally got them to cancel the credit card. They really didn't want to cancel that credit card, and they kept me in there for a while, trying to talk me out of it. It was quite funny, but at the same time very dark. It's as if now maybe I'm just paranoid. I could be paranoid here, Pox, but I just have the sneaky suspicion that banks getting their customers into debt, and debt is kind of like the common man, being wrapped up in shackles. What do you think?
Yeah, well, this was a conversation that came up. It was sort of lighting up Telegram last week or so, and everyone was giving their takes on it. And it's a bit disconcerting that people who consider themselves dissident or anti-establishment are not really either paying attention to this encroaching threat, or they're saying that it could actually be a good thing, and it's really based, actually, especially if it's the universal basic income. And there's the usual, like we were saying with the chemtrails, there's the usual poo-pooing of it, and it's not that big of a deal, and no one's actually talking about it. Well, that's certainly not true. There's a video, a recording of a WF, World Economic Forum, sort of chinwag, which all the important people are sitting on the stage, and they're talking about what the universal basic income would be like, and it's a social credit system for the West, for the rest of the world. And your universal basic income would be based on your civic participation. So it's your eligibility to get your UBI would be linked to voting. So you'd be required to vote. Okay, maybe that doesn't bother you, but the idea of so you're not working because you've been replaced by a robot, and there's no jobs for you. You're, as Yuval Harari, the gay Jew, describes you're a useless eater. And so now your only source of income are these digital tokens placed into your meaningless bank account, and it's money from the state that just basically sustains you. But in order to get that sustenance, or to get those digital tokens in your digital bank account, you need to participate in elections, voting for these, mediocre politicians that don't represent your interests or even your ethnicity, even now increasingly. And it's linked to other things too. Your wrong think misdeeds, or your carbon footprint, and we already know that this is coming out of the mouths of corporations like MasterCard and Samsung, who have paired up to create, a sort of a credit card that can track your carbon footprint and, give you carbon credits. And then in the case of like digital currencies, well, that's just a death knell. I mean, I can't go back in time and stop the creation of the Federal Reserve, the World Bank, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank. I have to live in the timeline after the creation of those institutions. But those institutions already have shackled us in ways that sometimes I don't think people are aware of. One of the most blackpilling books I've ever read was A History of Central Banking by Stephen Goodson. And just the way that these central banks completely not only reshaped economics and banking, but reshaped people's lives and what they can expect out of their lives and the prosperity they can expect to obtain in their lives. It's really blackpilling. And I think, the subtitle of that book is The Enslavement of Mankind, or the history of central banking and the enslavement of mankind. And I think these digital currencies is the next step in that enslavement of mankind. And there's many good videos. I'll see if I can link this maybe in the chat, or I've already shared it on my Telegram. There's very many good videos on the threat of central banking. They're brief, they're shareable, they're normie friendly. One of the videos I like is actually just a recording of the exchange between, and now don't kill the messenger. Okay, I'm not suggesting that these are great people, but the message is what's important. It's just a recording of a conversation between Joe Rogan and I actually don't remember the name of the other guy. he's that like Egyptian or Arab guy who used to be an Islamic extremist, but then he changed his ways, and now he promotes like more Western civic values and stuff. And he's like an anti-jihadist guy. He was really famous along with Douglas Murray during like the whole counter-jihad neocon brief moment there. What's his name? Maybe someone in the chat knows. I'll find the video too, and I'll share it. But it's it's a 10-minute video, and it's just that guy explained to Joe Rogan the dangers of central bank digital currencies. And just the idea that money being digital, it being contingent on your behavior, Majid Nawaz, thank you, Babyface Nilsson, Majid Nawaz, Majid thingy, exactly. Even the Telegraph said in an article, we need to warn the Bank of England against these digital currencies being programmable, that your money could be programmable, that's programmed like a computer program, that you cannot use it on certain things. It's not programmed to pay for example, red meat, because that's now forbidden. So basically these aren't even currencies anymore. These are vouchers. They're coupons. You can only use them on whatever the coupon or voucher is valid for. So this isn't even currency anymore. And that I just think is dystopian. It is pure dystopian. And anyone who wants to poo-poo that, well, I think you haven't been paying attention for certainly the past 2 years. But I would even go further. You haven't been paying attention for the past 70 years, is what my thoughts would be on that matter.
If you have rose-tinted glasses, you'll think that the UBI is a great thing. But unfortunately, we live in a very degenerate time, and how that's going to operate then is, things I say will end up costing me access to food and access to privileges, no more liberties, privileges. So I say that I'm against the promotion of pedophilia, and then suddenly I'm not allowed outside my house. I've got a, what do you call it when you've got prisoners? They have a tag on them or something like that where they can't leave. You're under house arrest.
The ankle bracelet, or
that's it. The ankle bracelet. Yeah. Divisive experience there from you, Pox. You've had one before, you probably have one now. You probably have one now.
Well, what you're saying though, it isn't even satire or theory. Like, just over the past 48 hours, I've seen that PayPal was going to, and I say was going to because apparently they've backtracked, but they were going to implement starting next month, November of 2022, they were going to implement this new policy where PayPal would reserve the right to either freeze your account or I saw withdraw $2,000 from your account. And I suppose if you don't have $2,000 in your account, then they'll just keep taking money out of your account until they get it or something. I don't know. But they reserve the right to to interfere in your money that you have stored on this, these digital tokens, this meaningless number, because it's not actually money anymore. The digital tokens that you have stored on PayPal's platforms, they reserve the right to interfere with that if you engaged in the dissemination of quote unquote misinformation or hateful speech directed at protected groups. So the thing about the world we live in, I believe the world we live in is very much based on deception. It's very much based on predictive programming. It's very much based on theater. And I think that whenever you see things like this, whenever you see ideas like let's block out the sun, let's create contagious vaccines, which we can get to this as well. This is another news item that I just saw today. Let's control people's bank account and take money from them and punish them financially for their behavior online, for their social media posts, for their opinions, for their wrongthink. When you see these things being put out into the ether, don't take it lightly, because ideas are organic. Ideas are living things, and they manifest themselves into real life creatures. And we have to contend with that. And so, yeah, you might see these crazy headlines and you might think, oh, that'll never happen. Or that's just lab coats being Asperger's weirdos. But many times what you see in a headline today, 3 years later might become a reality. Or what you see being spoken and sort of theorized at a World Economic Forum session becomes policy a year later. And when the most powerful people in the world and people who have more power and wealth than anyone else ever in human history are putting out ideas like freezing bank accounts for wrongthink or blocking out the sun for climate change reasons, I take that seriously. Now, I'm not a powerful person myself, so I can't combat or compete with these people. I can't stop them. So I'm not going to spend my days worrying and this isn't going to, I'm not going to throw myself off of a building because I'm just, oh my God, these headlines are so dystopian. But we are in an information warfare as well. We are in a propaganda war. And if they're going to put out ideas, we should respond in kind with our ideas. And while we have the freedom of speech and of thought, do what we can to counter these ideas with ours. And that's all I'm suggesting we do. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm asking from this community that calls itself dissident and anti-establishment. It's just pay attention, keep your wits about you, have some instincts. And as you said, take off the rose-colored glasses. These ideas might be nice, might be good, if they were being thought up by people who we know don't like us. It's like maybe universal basic income is a good idea, but not when it's going to be created, devised, and implemented by people who consider me a useless eater, an evil white male. So maybe no, I shouldn't just run openly into their designs, their traps.
Yeah, you do get the sense, that we're being corralled, and the banks have a lot to do with it. I was going to say as well that you mentioned, it would be programmable and all that, but there's also it's been mentioned, there's also like a time limit. So you have to spend your income within a certain, before a certain date, and then, the following month or whatever, you get money again. So in this situation, people who are able to delay gratification, who plan to save money to do something or to buy something, they'll never be able to do it. So you're going to be, the people who are disciplined will be in the exact same situation as, people who just want to spend all the time.
Total enslavement, total consumer culture. And there's only one person, there's only one, demographic that benefits from such a consumer culture, and that's the mercantile class. That's the banking class. I don't want to live in their framework. I reject this. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that mercantile class, you should remember that, they have no sins at all, because somehow through magic they're able to put their sins into a chicken, so they don't have to repent. They don't have to repent. They're as clean as a whistle, my friend. They're as clean as a whistle. But just to say as well, I saw a comment there from Irish Fenian a few minutes back, and if you ever want to know about the film Rocky IV, Irish Fenian, he's the guy to go to. But there is a comment he left, and he mentioned the self-service. Like, I don't know if you remember, Pox, like years ago, many years ago, when you'd go into a supermarket, you'd have a person at the till, and you'd put your stuff on the conveyor belt, and usually there was a bagger, a person bagging the groceries on each side. And that was the service. You were a customer, and the idea was you went in there to get your goods, but you also got a service. Your groceries were bagged for you. I think in America, like I often saw in the films, they would walk you out to your car, with the trolley. They'd push the trolley for you.
Yeah, there was a time. Yeah, there was, depending on the supermarket, but yeah, that was one of the services, definitely.
Yeah. So like when you go in now, I noticed when, Lidl and Aldi came to Ireland, they didn't seem like supermarkets in that you felt you were more in a warehouse than in a supermarket. It was kind of a wholesale vibe going on.
the Aldi trough for the lifestyle. Just nothing is in like shelves and organized aisles. It's just, here it is. Just, it's still in like its cardboard containers, just thrown together. It's like go on, pigs, feed yourselves from the trough.
It was sitting on a pallet, a lot of it. Like I remember years ago, it was all on pallets. But that's another thing. I think there was some comedian once, he joked about KFC, and you'd eat a bucket of chicken, and it could have been Ricky Gervais. He said,
it's Ricky Gervais. Yeah.
When did that happen? When did humans start eating from buckets? But just getting back, like I remember, it was around, it would have been around the same time as I was talking to people about chemtrails in Tesco's in Ireland, which is a British company. They started the self-service thing, and these machines were just terrible. Like half the time they didn't work. And I always try to avoid using one. I think I used one maybe twice. And, a lot of people were starting to use them, but older people were queuing up, a very long queue, maybe just one person on a till. And then you had 5 self-service machines. And the idea there is that, so there was a time when you go into a supermarket, you'd get your stuff, and there would be a woman there to scan everything for you. And there would be a bagger then to put your stuff in the trolley, all in bags. Now you do all that yourself. You scan your own goods, and you bag your own goods. Essentially, you're working. You're just another employee of the supermarket.
Yeah, where I live, there are no self-checkout supermarkets. Where I go, there's still a cashier, but there are no baggers. That has gone, that's gone extinct. I think it just depends on the city, depends on the supermarket chain itself. the self checkout machines, the automatic ones where there's not even a human cashier. They definitely are commonplace all over America, and I've seen them there. What's also now coming down the pike, and this is after the normalization of working from home, shopping from home, being under house arrest, being under lockdown in the name of some cause. Well, now it's going to be digital shopping. This is something else that I've shared ages ago. These sort of things, you see that they come up. They're thought up by some think tank or some lab coat organization, and then these sort of prototype or blueprint ideas get shared around, and this is what shopping will look like in the future. And it's basically you shopping in the metaverse. It's virtual reality. You don't leave your home, but instead of it being this strange experience where you just sort of scroll through items on your phone or on your screen, and you just click and drag into your like you do when you shop online. I want to buy this product, put it in shopping basket, check out, pay, and wait for it to arrive. Well, no, now we're going to have this virtual reality experience. So you actually do feel like you're going out into the world, and you're going to a shop and you're buying things, and oh, look, here comes a shop assistant to help you. But it's so dystopian. Like in the beta versions, like you were saying, the supermarket kind of looks more like an industrial warehouse. It's empty and cold, and there's no other shoppers, and the aisles are actually empty until you get there, and then they light up with these zeros and ones forming milk bottles and boxes of cereal and something, and then a shop assistant comes up and speaks very robotically to you. Hello, can I help you? Looks like you want some milk. And it's just it's very it's very uncanny valley. It's very off-putting, but supposedly this is what shopping in the future is going to look like. So yeah, again, I think the word that I use is it's dystopian. It's strange. It's anti-human. It's sanitized. It's homogenized. It's centralized. It's just everything that I think has gone too far already is now just going even further. All right. One quick thing I will add is that towards the end of the show here, we'll have like a little Q&A session. You can obviously send a question in the Odyssey chat or the YouTube chat, and if I catch it, I'll try and highlight it and not forget it for later. Or you can also send questions via super chat on Entropy. The link is there. It's also in the chat on both Odyssey and YouTube. Again, I hope everything is going well on Odyssey. I do see some people are watching on Odyssey, and there are some comments in the chat. But I still have this frozen image saying that the media cannot be loaded. The server or network has failed. So this has been plaguing me for well over now 3 weeks on Odyssey. I can't watch live streams on Odyssey, and apparently I can't upload my own. So I hope everything is going well over there regardless. All right, German Pointer, I wanted also to talk to you about one other thing here before we go to questions and comments. Did you see, you might not have seen this, but this actually, I don't think you have, because it just caught my attention today, this morning.
I think I know what you're going to say, but please continue. And if it is the thing, we can definitely discuss it. Go ahead.
This is the I'll translate the Spanish headline into English. It says that here we go. It has arrived. The intranasal flu vaccine has arrived in Spanish pharmacies. Where to buy it and the price. It can only be purchased under medical prescription and is indicated for children between 2 and 17 years of age and must be administered by a health professional. Health workers urge an acceleration in flu vaccination in face of a possible rebound of COVID. They're not going to let COVID go, are they? So this is a sprayable nasal spray flu vaccine. Is this the thing that you were thinking?
It is not. It is not. But we can talk about two things before the questions. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Grant, good. So yeah, I just saw this just this morning, sprayable vaccines, and I was talking about how these ideas become reality at some point or another. I remember in 2020, when everyone, the whole world was going mental. I remember reading articles about, it's time to it's time to implement the transmissible vaccines, the spreadable vaccines. If viruses are transmissible, why can't the vaccines be transmissible? And I read an article in some mainstream media magazine or website, and it was all about how the technology exists. People are working on this, vaccines that can be administered in a spray, vaccines that can be contagious, vaccines that can be edible in your food, all these different ways of getting vaccines to more and more people, because it's just too cost ineffective. It's too inefficient and stressful to try and get injections to 7 billion people. So we need to find a way to get billions of people vaccinated. Okay, well, let's spray them. Let's put the vaccines in their food, or let's make the vaccine contagious. And now I see, well, lo and behold, 2 years later, here is a nasal spray vaccine. So if they can, have it in this form where you spray it up your nose, well, then who's to say that in a very short amount of time, it won't be industrial sort of spray, and there'll be, like we saw these supposed images out of China where, armies of people in hazmat suits spraying chemicals everywhere, spraying God knows what everywhere. Well, we could be coming to a future where, they're going to be spraying vaccines, and you'll step out, you open your window, and you just got vaccinated with the thing that you didn't want to get vaccinated with anyway, because you thought you had bodily autonomy. Not anymore. So what do you think about this new development?
Yeah, they could easily, they could easily put stuff into the water supply, if they really wanted to, and nobody would be any the wiser. I think I remember years ago, I was working overseas and with some colleagues who were playing five-a-side soccer on an AstroTurf pitch, and in the complex, this it was like this little van started driving around, and it was the maintenance people, and they were spraying, the area for bugs, and this kind of pink purple cloud came out of it, and it spread. It was, I can imagine it was like mustard gas or something like that, and we had to leave. We all had to leave the football pitch, and the idea was that they were spraying the grounds for to make sure that we wouldn't have any cockroaches or any vermin whatsoever. It seems now that we humans have become the vermin, and we need to be gassed to oblivion. I don't know, but Spain is, as you said, they're not letting go, and for for big pharma, this is the gift that keeps on giving. They'll keep going with this for as long as possible. I will say it's quite appalling to see how many hypochondriacs there are now, compared to before the pandemic. You've a lot of people now who are just obsessed with their health in a bad way, in a bad way. And I actually remember last year, I had a plumber in, and he was whatever he was doing, and we got chatting a bit, and I was hoping, I just thought, this is a blue collar guy. He'll know the score, he's not going to be fooled by the propaganda, And he was talking about COVID, whatever, but he wasn't, he wasn't too excited. He was just talking about it, and I tried to give him a few cues to try and, suss him out and see what he'd make of it, And I said to him, "Oh yeah," I said, it's terrible. I said it's killed nobody here in the village," something like that, And one eyebrow went up. He didn't really know what I was on about, And then he was on about the vaccine, And he said, "Oh," he said, I got my second vaccine there." And I immediately realized, right, I have to shut the fuck up here. I can't really say much to this guy. And he pulled up his sleeve. He was very proud. He pulled up his sleeve to show me, his Medal of Honor that he gone and got the second. I think actually it was vaccine number 3. He got the first 2. He
Oh,
got the first
gosh.
2 in his right arm, but the second one, he said his right arm got swollen, so he was going to be very savvy this time and get his third jab in the left arm, you know.
Mm.
And I said to him, I said, you're obviously a very bright guy, you know. You made sure your left arm didn't swell, you know. You're very sensible. And but that was quite disappointing, because I thought, you know, you think that people in the working class, are more prone to disbelieving the government propaganda. But I was mistaken.
I honestly don't know what to think. It was just something, I think, kind of in the way that Americans after September 11th, you know, how you would get suddenly, like, even people who didn't vote for George W. Bush or hated George W. Bush, we're now, you know, really supportive of George W. Bush. And yeah, we do need to go and invade Iraq. We do need to respond. You know, of course, there was obvious, you know, resistance to that. Of course, that did happen. People were opposed to that. But like, or, you know, people who would, in any other context, they wouldn't be very pro-American. They would certainly never wave an American flag from their, you know, front porch. But after 9/11, they certainly did do that. So I think, you know, with the COVID thing, it was another one of these things where it was something so massive, in many ways new for a lot of people to deal with. People these days have spent a long time, many, you know, their entire lives, without having to go through much collective adversity. You know, everyone is going through their own personal problems. Everyone has, you know, relationship issues and work issues and things like that. But a grand struggle on a, you know, national level, where we're all meant to, you know, come together, and, you know, as they continually told us, we're all in the same boat, and, you know, we need to do this as one. That really hasn't happened for a lot of people today. And so I think the reason why even people who you would have thought to be savvy, or the working classes, or, you know, that you might think to be suspicious of things, I think the reason why it just seemed like everyone seemed to go all in on this, was because, you know, there was a sense of togetherness. There was a sense of doing your duty. There was certainly a lot of peer pressure. There was unbelievable levels of fear mongering and very sophisticated propaganda designed to coerce people into taking decisions that they maybe didn't want to take. There were people who had, you know, who complied because they were basically threatened with losing their livelihoods. And so, I mean, I don't, I'm worried sometimes that we do take what we see online and in outrageous headlines, or, you know, on what we see on shitlibs and blue checks on Twitter, and we extrapolate that into the real world. I want to doubt that, you know, the vast majority of people are like, you know, the vax happy maniacs on Twitter. And I think that in the real world, a lot of people, they just weren't dedicating a lot of thought to this. And they might have felt like, yeah, okay, something's going on. Some of these measures I don't think are correct, but, you know, what can I do about it? And, you know, I don't want to be the reason why Granny gets the flu and dies. So I'm going to do what the experts are saying to do. And just, you know, that's that. And now let's go about the rest of my day. Hey, did you see the game? You know, which, that's not an excuse. I think that's, you know, a very weak mind. I think that's certainly not a mentality that, you know, fosters a intelligent and you know, independent, you know, society of independent thinkers. But yeah, looking for explanations as to why even, you know, everyone from the working class to upper class, everybody just seemed to be really crazy. Although I have seen some statistical analysis that kind of vindicates the sort of bell curve IQ theory, where, you know, at one end is the really, you know, retarded person, at the other end is the genius, and ultimately they actually have the same opinion. It's just, they're coming at it from different angles, from different ends of the IQ spectrum, and it's the midwits in the middle who are completely wrong. And I have seen actually some statistics that vindicate that. So the least educated people and the most educated people, like PhDs, were the ones most hesitant to get the vaccines, and it was all the midwits in the middle with like master's degrees or bachelor's degrees or whatever, who were all, yeah, let's go get 3 and 4 and 5 jabs, whatever the experts tell us, whatever the media tells us. So yeah, I think it was a big new thing for a lot of people, and that kind of mind fucked a lot of people. But yeah, it was definitely and still is definitely a crazy thing to have gone through. What was the thing that you had in mind?
No, I was just going to say that I can understand people getting one job. For example, they were worried about their jobs. Maybe they were blackmailed into getting it if they wanted to attend family events, which is really a horrible situation to be in. But I can understand any real number of reasons for the first one. But when someone has, because we were all told that once you get your first one, that's it. You're not going to get COVID-19, my friend. You're okay. And then, a few months later, hey, you actually need to get a second one. Mm-hmm. Now the penny should drop for most people then, saying this is a scam. You told me I only needed to get one. Now you're telling me I need to get 2. And then when they got the second one, you had these robotic whatever dialing machines telling them they had an appointment, or they got a text message telling them they had an appointment to get the third one. And at that stage, I just can't fathom how anyone would stroll into a clinic and pull their sleeve up.
Yeah,
you should know by then. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be. You don't have to be of middling intelligence. Common sense should prevail here. You should say, right, I did what you told me to do. I got my job. I got a second one, and now you want me to get another one. And I don't even know how many jobs. Are people under 5th now? They call it a booster or a super booster. I don't even know.
It's interesting that you've mentioned, that people should have been starting to ask questions when they were told, okay, now you need to get a second one. Actually, now you need to get a third one. Actually, now your immune system is a subscription service and you have to get topped up every month. So make sure you've updated your subscription to Pfizer or whatever. And Morgoth had a really interesting post on Telegram about this. And I think, as we look for explanations about, people's behavior and why were people so compliant, even though all observable circumstances should have provoked a lot of, questioning and non-compliance. But there's a lot that goes on in our culture that it seems designed to cause confusion and frustration and stress and uncertainty. And so Morgoth talked about this on his Telegram. So he has here a screenshot of like some mainstream, blue check media account on Twitter with the headline to their article, the link to their article with the headline, "Want to save the oceans? Well, stop recycling plastic. If you put your plastic in the recycling bin, there's a decent chance it will end up in the seas off of East Asia. If you put it in a landfill, it's going nowhere." And Morgoth's response to that was really, I think, astute. And he writes, "One of the reasons so many people in the West are becoming unhinged and demented is the ever-shifting sands of what passes for truth and certainty. Nothing is ever settled. Nothing can ever be taken for granted, because no sooner has something become a perceived truth than it flips and becomes the opposite." And he's listed here some examples. So first, free speech is a core liberal value. Now, free speech is a threat to liberal democratic values. Before, big pharma are gangsters who don't care about your health. Now, big pharma are the experts' scientific consensus. In the past, racism is evil. Now, let's purge all the white people from media. And, I'm sure we could go on. I remember not long ago when everybody, the mainstream media, the left, the liberals, the anti-establishment, was all about being anti-big pharma and how evil the pharmaceutical industry is, and particularly in the United States with their healthcare system, the health insurance industry. It's all a scam. It's all designed to milk every last penny from the poor American who's suffering an illness. And then COVID comes along and it's like, oh, big pharma, save us. We believe you. Oh, you want me to get a second injection? Oh, please. Tell me more. How many more do you want me to get? I worship you. I cling to every word you say. You are my God. You have saved me. And it was just a complete reversal of what the mainstream zeitgeist was just a few years ago. So yeah, it was very very, like like Morgoth said, very shifting sand.
Yeah, they were probably, a few years back, they were probably protesting outside Wall Street. And now the same people are, waiting with bated breath for the next set of directions from Big Pharma.
Yeah. What was the thing that you thought I was going to talk about?
All right. Yeah, no, I saw it. So I was out today. I went for a long walk. And when I got back, I checked my phone. And I went on to Twitter, and you get stuff in your feed. And thing is, you never know the context of things these days. And I retweeted it anyway. I just said, "What a scumbag!"
Actually, I think I just saw this too.
Go on, tell me what.
No.
I want to be sure.
Is this the Iker Casillas and Carlos Puyol thing?
No. This is in Ireland. This is a video. This is a video of supposedly he's a comedian. He looks African, and I believe it's in Dublin. And he has a TikTok channel. This so-called comedian, he has a TikTok channel, and he wanted to trend on TikTok. So he goes to a homeless man, an Irish homeless man, and he tells him, he says, "I'll give you €1 if you do press-ups." So the homeless guy is he's down on his knees, and then he gets into the position and he starts doing press-ups. He does kind of half press-ups, to be honest, but still. So you've got this homeless Irish guy down on the ground doing press-ups for money, and the African is going 1, 2, 3, and he's like, "Come on, man, come on, 4, 5," and he's got a kind of half Irish, half English accent, which seems to be very common now. That it's not an Irish accent and it's not an English accent. It's some sort of mix. And
I've noticed the Africans in Ireland will also really exaggerate their accent to try and, I guess, fit in even more. But it comes across as really comical, actually.
Yeah, they do actually. You're right. They do exaggerate it. But yeah, so this is what's happening in the video. And then when he gets to 20, then the African gives him money. He gives him, I don't know, does he give him €20? But still, he gives him money and says, good man. And then he turns the camera around, so it's like a selfie with him and the homeless guy, And I just saw that, and I just said, this is just disgusting,
Mm-hmm.
Someone they want they want to grow on social media. They probably want to make lots of money from their comedy, but they're doing it by humiliating a person who has nothing. And obviously there's the racial thing as well, and there's the thing of the foreigner standing over and dictating to the homeless indigenous person. So that was a
we've
horrible viewing. Yeah,
a lot about the Spanish collective mindset and Spanish cultural rot or the ideological warfare here. But one of the things that's really demoralizing is to see how much the Irish have surrendered, and how how willing they seem to be to be this sort of epicenter of global homo. And I knew this would happen. I knew, because the demographic destruction of the Irish population happened relatively recent. It happened a bit later than, say, France or Germany or England. And I remember when I made my channel in 2018, it wasn't that bad yet. But I even made a video saying, Ireland is going to be next. Ireland is in the crosshairs. It's going to be next, and this is a country, an island country, where the native ethnic Gaels are about 4 million. 4 million people can be replaced in one generation, easy. And I won't stand for this. We have to be prepared for this, because I knew what would likely happen. That the terrain had been so well tilled and well prepared in Ireland. The Irish, progressivism, the Irish liberalism is so dominant that the people will actually welcome their replacement with open arms to try and, look more progressive than those, racist little Englanders across the sea. And it is really, for me, it's demoralizing, because I expected something better. I guess I knew this would happen. I knew that the surrender would happen, because Ireland is, trying to be so progressive these days. Certainly the elite, the ruling class, and a sizable, portion of the population. But I wanted there to be at least some really ardent resistance. And that's the part that's been sad for me to observe, is that it just doesn't, like, that a black man standing over an Irish homeless person and telling him to do push-ups for money, that should be a scandal. That should, light the fire in every Irish patriot's belly, but it doesn't happen. And I've mentioned many times how, it's acceptable. All the Sinn Féin soy boys will happily shout Ireland for the Irish if the person they're shouting that slogan to is a Brit. But the second someone like me says, hey, you know what? That slogan should also be shouted at the Nigerians and the Moroccans and the Turks and the Pakistanis who are coming here en masse and completely transforming Irish neighborhoods and communities. Well, then all of a sudden now I'm a far right extremist and I need to be, expelled from media and from social media and from politics. So I think it really is a depressing state of hypocrisy in Ireland right now. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
The change happened, the dramatic change happened around 2010 when the IMF came to Ireland, because Ireland was seemingly broke. It had been riding on debt for decades, a bubble housing market. And you got the sense, because I remember seeing the images of these globalists coming to Dublin, and they're being shown around by the politicians. And the politicians look like messenger boys beside these globalists. So we don't know what changes had to be brought about, but changes were brought about, and I think that has led to a change. Because if you're broke, if you're absolutely flat broke as a country, and you have to borrow money, as we know, you don't just get the money. You have to do things in return. And in the case of Ireland, it was you have to take on board everything we tell you that is good and progressive. You have to do it. So I think that was really the crossroads. There was no going back after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the the Celtic Tiger and that sort of thing, and just with materialism and superficiality and consumer culture, the population becomes emasculated. The population loses its vital barbarism that I've spoken about in previous videos. A term that comes from, I don't know if he coined it, but he certainly was the person I've seen use it, was Guillaume Durocher's book about ancient Greece and the ancient ethno-state is the name of his book. And he talks about how for the Greeks, vital barbarism was very important to them, particularly in a culture like Sparta. And when you're comfortable and the money's flowing in, it can actually be a corrosive effect. There's a question here from No Globo. He asks, is it true that Northern Ireland is now more Irish than Ireland? I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think what you're referring to is something that I also saw in the news floating around not too long ago. I think it's that Northern Ireland's Catholic population is increasing, and I don't know if it actually surpassed the non-Catholic population, or if it's just like reaching the like sort of the same percentage. I don't know. Do you have any particular insight on this one?
I haven't been back in a few years, so I can't give you up-to-date information. I can say from what I'm hearing, Northern Ireland, or as I'd prefer to say, the 6 counties, are more Irish in terms of being more traditional. They say that the Catholics are now more than the Protestants, but that doesn't really mean anything now when you're being flooded, and that part of the country is being flooded as well, but not to the same extent as the Republic.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are people who were in the 26 counties who moved to the 6 counties because they felt that the 26 counties weren't Ireland anymore, and Ulster was a better prospect for them. So yeah, I think in a sense that it's more traditional, yes, it would be more Irish. That's another thing I should say, because of the IMF and all that. If you go to Ireland now, apart from some villages and towns, whatever, but generally Dublin and Galway and these cities, you get the feeling you're in an airport. You've never left the airport. Mm-hmm. It's very, very commercial. It's very multicultural. You don't get a sense that because when you go to a country, like I absolutely hate airports, and they don't seem to represent the country at all. And then you have to travel a good bit outside, the capital city or whatever, and then you get into the real native population and the traditions. And the airport is the opposite to that. But Ireland now, it just seems, last time I was home, it seemed that the whole, large swathes of the country were now just, outside airports.
It's curious. I mentioned I made my YouTube channel in 2018. And it's curious because I think the second or third video, maybe third video I ever made on that channel, I was actually called "Turning the World into an Airport." And even more curiously, it was an epiphany that came to me whilst traveling to Ireland on a trip to see a friend of mine in Ireland. And I remember being in the airport and thinking, this is what they're turning the whole world into. The whole world is being turned into an airport, because you go to these different countries and you leave the airport and it's kind of the same as it was in the airport. It's just lots of different people from all around the world going about their own business, speaking all sorts of different tongues. And everyone's basically antisocial. Nobody wants to make eye contact or speak to anyone. And why would they? It's not like we're kin. It's not like we're friends. It's not like we're neighbors. We're all people with something to do, and we all come from somewhere else, and we're all trying to get somewhere else. And the environment that these people are around, that they're in, is one of just sort of random assortment of franchises and fast food restaurants and sports bars to keep you entertained as you wait for your flight. And then there's the duty-free shiny things that you can waste your money on and feel good about having purchased something special. But in the end, it's not a culture. It's certainly not a it's just empty. It's just consumerism. And I remember thinking the very same thing. It's like, well, when you step out of the airport and then you enter Dublin city, like, what's the difference between the two? And how Dublin now is just, it's not much different than any other major capital city. And you really have to go out of your way to find a decent, traditional pub with creaky wooden floors and no pipe music and an actual Irishman behind the bar, pouring the pints, and people from Dublin talking to each other. It's not just some, tourist trap or multinational place. And skyscrapers going up everywhere, completely transforming the look of the city. It's definitely something that I've noticed and it has stuck with me. And again, as Lion Man says, it's complete destruction of culture. Exactly, it is. It's why I consider myself a very radical nationalist. It's why I continue to use the term ethno-nationalist or even tribal nationalist. And I say this as someone who lives in a country, in an area of the world that's not where I was born and grew up. But still my opinion is that the best thing to do is preserve your traditions and your people and your culture, particularly at a time when, for like the past 150 odd years, I would say, the trend has been ever more centralization, homogenization, sanitization, and I don't like it. I think it's actually causing a lot of harm, and I think most of our audience would agree.
I probably said this to you in a previous video, but you know, as an Irishman who grew up in Ireland, we generally took it for granted. We took it for granted that Ireland would always be the home of the Irish. And I remember many years ago, I was very briefly in the US, and at the airport there was a guy. You know, he was from Boston. He was working in California, and I think I asked him. I was asking one of the women who worked at the airport where the toilets were, and he heard my accent, and he said, wait a minute, are you from Ireland? And I said, I am. And he immediately said, I'll show you, you know, I'll walk you down and show you where the doors are to, you know, to the toilets. And then he turned to the two women and he said, this guy's from Ireland. He said, that's where my people come from. That's where my people come from. And I was kind of taken aback because I was thinking, right, you know, maybe it's a bit OTT that, you know, the way he's going on here, you know, but that's something, you know, we Irish, we kind of forgot as well that there's a massive diaspora in North America, in Australia, countries like that. They have this romantic notion of Ireland. And it's in their heads, you know, whatever goes on in the US, you know, that's not really their home. They have this idea, you know, we're in here, you know, we grew up here in America, but America's, you know, it's the land of milk and honey. We can always, if we ever get fed up, we can always go back to the old country. And you've heard of Paris syndrome. You know, these Americans, you know, with Irish ancestry, they go back to Ireland in the current year, and they're absolutely flummoxed. they just don't know. You know, they've been told by their grandfather and their father all about Ireland. It's a great country. They were there in the, you know, in the 60s and maybe in the 80s. They had a session in the pub. They had great crack. They go there, and as you say, they can't find an Irish person, and they're going back to a place that no longer exists. And I'll tell you something. When, you know, the last time I was home, I made a video at the time, a few little videos, and I mentioned that there was you know, a lot of the posters, the advertising in Dublin Airport, it was all, you know, Africans. You wouldn't find, you know, because the sense of when you arrive in a country is that they will show, you know, posters about the country, you know, and the local people, but most of them were, you know, most of the bank posters were all black men, black women. And there was a poster, and I thought it epitomized the modern Ireland. It was a beautiful kind of painting of a Celtic legend called the Children of Lir. I won't get into the legend here and now, but generally the idea is that these they have an evil stepmother. The stepmother turns them into swans as a kind of punishment, and they have to spend 300 years on one lake, 300 years on another. But, you know, they had the beautiful kind of, I think you'd appreciate it because you're a big fan of Lord of the Rings and all that, you know, the Shire. So that's what it kind of looked like. It was a very pastoral scene, and you had the children in the old style clothes and tunics, whatever. And in the middle of the picture, you had a car. you had some Japanese.
Oh God!
Yeah. You had some Japanese or Korean flashy car, and that was the advertisement. And it just looked, you know, it looked completely out of place to have this, you know, flashy car in a fantasy picture from a Celtic legend, you know. And that to me kind of, you know, everything is commodified. Everything is commodified in Ireland. Nothing is sacred. Absolutely nothing is sacred. Everything can be used to turn a book, you know. So that's the story.
You know what? I didn't actually plan on reading this. I thought of just leaving it. But since we're talking about it, Irish culture and how it seems as if Ireland is losing its connection to its roots in a way, I'll read you this. This was in the Irish Independent today. And there's a Shawnee named Eddie Lenahan, who is gifting, it says here, gifting a treasure trove of recordings to the US after Irish apathy. And the long and short of it is that no one in Ireland was interested in, he basically has, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of recordings of interviews and stories with Irish people, some of whom, when he was a young man making recordings, he was speaking to people who were the oldest man in the village, 90 something years old, people who fought in World War One, even the Boer Wars, and there was nobody in Ireland was willing to offer a grant. No one seems interested in these stories and these recordings, so he's offering them to an Irish American institution in the United States, which is interesting that you mentioned, the Irish diaspora. This is why, the plastic patty thing. Yeah, I can see where it comes from. It's the same with, the Italian Americans. They don't actually represent what a genuine, Italian back in the old country is like. And of course, you always get these Americans that they say, I'm a quarter this, I'm half this, and I'm 8% that. And it's always very interesting to hear them list their various ethnicities that they descend from. Or like, the Irish Americans who have an Irish pub, but they've never been to Ireland or anything like that. But they're still very proud to be Irish, and they do know that they come from there. But the good side of the Irish in America is that they seem to have a stronger affinity and passion for their roots. Odd as that may seem, and so it was interesting that this came up, and I really this line that he says in this piece in the Irish Independent really resonated with me. So he said, "Nobody in Ireland has ever shown any interest. Most people are only interested in their pockets. We have forgotten our roots. The Irish have everything they need in their own culture, and instead they think they have to go to the East and Zen Buddhism for wellness. What do you need wellness for when you can look into your own garden?" And I just really thought that's why I shared that on my Telegram as well. I highlighted that part of his interview, because I just think every word resonated with me a lot. And it is sad then to see that a country with such a rich culture is kind of being apathetic about it. But it is the time that we're living in. Is my connection just going out there?
You're breaking up a bit. Yeah,
3 bars.
I don't know if it's my connection or yours. So I didn't say anything. Yeah.
No, let me check mine here. Let me just check my connection.
Yeah, the people in the chat can let us know. Yeah, it just went a bit robotic towards the end.
All right, let's try again.
I'll just I'll just speak while Pox is sorting out.
Oh, so you still can't hear me?
I didn't. Have you been speaking the last few seconds?
Yeah.
I just heard you saying you can't hear me. That's
okay.
All I heard. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back now then. No, I was just wondering if it's okay. Am I back on? Can people hear me?
I can hear you anyway. Yeah.
Okay. It says now that I've got full signal, full bars. So, but just briefly there, I was down to 1 bar of signal strength there. So I don't know what happened. Anyway, you were saying.
I was just going to say, just to fill the void, I was going to say that you mentioned the Italian Americans. I presume you've watched The Sopranos.
No, actually.
That's
I hardly watch television.
Okay, right. Well, there's some good episodes, I have to say, some very good episodes, and in one of them, Tony Soprano, the mobster. He's worried about his daughter because she's imbibing all this kind of American cultural Marxism garbage, and he drives her to church, and he points at the stones, and he says, "You know, your grandfather and his uncle and the other uncle, granduncle, whatever, they built that church, and they did it with their hands. They were, expert marble stonemasons or whatever." And he's trying to remind her of her roots.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something we all kind of need, to know where we came from, not just to be easy prey for the banks.
All right. Well, let's then take it and throw it to the audience for some questions and comments. And then we've been going for about 2 hours, so I don't want to take up too much of your time this evening. So we'll wrap it up after taking some questions and comments. All right, chat, any thoughts of your own? Any questions for my guest tonight? And also remember that you can send super chats to the Entropy if you're so inclined. We would, of course, appreciate that. In Casa Pox Populi, you can contribute to the cause for making little Pox Populis.
Populitos.
Yeah, exactly. In the meantime, as they are thinking of thoughts and questions and comments, any plans then for future content that we can look forward to on your Odyssey channel? You said you were going to make a follow-up to your bank video. Anything else?
Yeah, that will be coming in the next few days. I think I'm going to do a movie review with a guy called This Drinking Life. It's kind of a documentary film called Threads. It was about nuclear Armageddon in England in the 1980s. I think it was a BBC production, so we might be talking about that maybe next weekend. And I'll probably do a few movie reviews. I'll try to do an Irish film with Irish Fenian at some stage. And I'd like to do a movie review of The Matrix. I haven't watched it in about 10 or 12 years, so I'd like to watch that again and look at it from this perspective, yeah.
Okay, we got a question here. Babyface Nilsson asks, why did you move to Spain?
Yeah, it was a pretty simple decision. I think I wanted to learn Spanish, and I was working in Dublin. I think there was a free kind of little phrase book every week. So 1 week was German, 1 week was French, and 1 week was Italian, and 1 week was Spanish. And I got the Spanish one, and I started learning just basic sentences and vocabulary. And I had it in my head that I moved there, and I tried to write a novel, and that's what I did. I wanted to move somewhere where there would be less paperwork involved, and since we're all in the European Union, Spain was the easiest option. I did have this idea that I would go to Spain, and then after that I would go to and live in South America for a while. But I spent time in Mexico, but I never lived in South America.
Yeah, I actually, before I moved to Spain, I was just sort of sending my CV everywhere, to pretty much any English school or anywhere that would be interested in hiring me. And I sent a few to South America. I was looking at some South American destinations as well. Ultimately, I think I would say that was before I was fully red pilled on like race issues, IQ, functional society issues, things like that. I mean, obviously, I still knew even back then, before being fully red pilled, that South American countries have certain reputations. But I thought, oh, it might be an exotic experience to teach in Colombia or Bolivia or something. But I think at the end it was probably for the best that I didn't end up there.
Yeah, I had it in my head as well that I get to see interesting insects and reptiles and stuff like that. So that was part of the draw for me, the biodiversity.
Yeah. Here's a question from Hey Slavery. He says, "What do you think of that lady in Italy, Meloni, another Trump? I'll let you take that, TGP, because if you're interested, Hey Slavery, my thoughts, you can find. On my Telegram, I did some lengthy posts about her, and then the recording of my Telegram live stream that I did 2 weeks ago, so just a few days after the election, was all about sort of like a deep dive into who she is and what we can expect from her. Sort of, I think, a pretty balanced take, if I do say so myself, but a bit, I would say, probably leaning more to the pessimistic side. Like, don't get your hopes up too much, is what I would say. But that's where you can find my opinion on that. TGP, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I put up 2 short videos. I would have my reservations about her. I don't think there's a political solution. I know a lot of people cling to that. I don't think there is. And it does seem very much like Trump. I think she's an ardent Zionist. So she was also pro-vax. I would say, Pox, you know a lot more than I do because you speak Italian and you keep in touch with what's going on over there. But yeah, I would definitely have reservations.
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize briefly, so Fratelli d'Italia, the Brothers of Italy, is her party, and they're basically just a pretty milquetoast, sort of tepid nationalist, kosher nationalist response to global homo, as you can expect. Just as Hey Slavery asked, is it just another Trump? So it's kind of the same thing, but it's controlled, I think, and then also massive red flags came up during the so-called pandemic, and some unforgivable sins were committed, in my opinion. So Meloni and the Fratelli d'Italia, they were in support of the Green Pass, which is, your basically your freedom card that is, contingent upon being vaccinated. And so Meloni was happy and proud to have been the first party to support the Green Pass, and I hope that it spreads throughout Europe and becomes our pathway to freedom. So yeah, that was a massive red flag. But she might be able to do some other good things, and the people in her party, and even the people in Lega, there are some people in Lega who, when Lega was in power, with their sort of very, very weak, wobbly alliance with the leftist populists and Five Star, there are some people in Lega who have good ideas, but as you said, the solution might not be in politics, and if it is, I think it's actually going to be more on like the local, provincial, not very glamorous level. It's going to be in the day-to-day grind of just trying to keep your traditions and sanity in your community. And then, of course, the national elections get all the attention, but maybe that's not where the biggest victories are actually going to be won day to day. Okay, yeah, so you did catch that stream. Okay. Yeah, so then here's a question here. This is interesting. I don't know if this is a question coming from Odyssey. This is from Lookout. He says, I've been told the guest you have on has channels where he imitates IRL nationalists from Ireland while he stays anonymous. Is this true? That would be schizo, seeing as Ireland is under such attack. I'm not sure. I've never heard that. Is that something you do?
I can only say 2 things. One, I can't see the Odyssey chats. And number 2, there is a channel. It's called Trader FM. Now, legend has it that, it's a very professional channel. It has 26 professional voice actors. It has a number of writers. It's by no means a one-man job. And I recommend people go over there to Trader FM and find out exactly what's going on. I'm hearing a lot about it. I'll have to check it out myself. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any more questions? Let's see. Yeah, on the Odyssey, you have to. Odyssey doesn't show up on the StreamYard. StreamYard only syncs to YouTube, so you can see the comments coming in on YouTube. But if you want to see on Odyssey, you have to go directly onto the Odyssey platform. And so I don't see any other questions there. And I'll give you guys a few more minutes if you want to send questions on YouTube. And I don't see anything else in the entropy. In the meantime, TGP, what are your final thoughts to wrap up this conversation tonight?
Yeah, my final thoughts, I would just say to people to take it day by day. Do make plans. You might not be able to make long-term plans at the moment, but do make plans. Keep your self-esteem up. If you can do some physical exercise, get out. Don't be inside all the time. And yeah, don't believe everything you hear. Look up at the sky from time to time and ask questions.
All right, great. Yeah, I fully agree with that message as well. Okay, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this chat between the German Pointer and I. I certainly did myself. And I wish you all a very good evening, good night, or depending on where you are in the world, you could be just enjoying your day. In any case, take care, and I will speak with you all next time. Goodbye.